From 0 to 142 miles an hour. It was a late fall afternoon in 1991, back in the Midwest, back in Indiana, and I was walking back from class. And the weather was nice and cool. It wasn't tempestuous, but it was getting cool late into the day, but the sun was still shining. And as I'm walking back from class, I hear this sound of an engine, this distinct kind of like humming sound, like coming behind me, getting closer and closer. And as I look over my shoulder, I see this sport bike. And you may have seen some sport bikes where it's like in a really aggressive stance of the rider, and it looks like it should be on a racetrack other than the street. And it was the 1991 Honda CBR 600 F2. And what was really amazing about this bike is the rims were white, which you traditionally don't see white rims. And the whole front fairing was really aerodynamic, where the turn signals were integrated into this fairing, and you had the headlight there. And I looked at that motorcycle, and the first thought that came to mind was, wow, how incredible it would be to ride a motorcycle like that around campus and take trips and those types of things. Well, a split second after that, the next thought that hit my mind was, but Robert, you're too old. You can't learn how to ride a motorcycle. You're 21 years old. The people who ride motorcycles, you know, they're in their teens and they ride dirt bikes, and then over time they get some experience, and then they get a street bike and they ride a street bike. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, welcome guest. Today I'm going to share with you my story about setting goals and how that ties into riding a motorcycle. Now, after I had that thought of, this is out of the question, I can't afford one, I don't know how to ride one, etc., I reflected on some of the Tony Robbins books that I'd been reading at the time. And he talked about setting that goal, number one, and visualizing that goal, and taking action. So I went home that day, and I still had this notebook. I should have brought it with me, a 3-ring binder, and I written my goals in there. Number one, learn how to ride a motorcycle. Very broad, but very simple. That would be the first step. And then number two, buy a motorcycle. And then number three, get some experience so that I'm safe when I'm out there going on rides. So that first step, learn how to ride a motorcycle. I had a friend that took me out to the middle of nowhere there in Indiana and said, we're not going home until you learn how to ride the motorcycle that he had. And it was very heavy and it was very difficult to ride. And I thought, well, this isn't probably the best way to go about it. So I took a motorcycle beginner's riding course. And in that course, I remember meeting early in the morning in the parking lot with a bunch of beginner riders, and they start you very slow, from taking a dirt bike and just pushing it from one end of the parking lot to the end to feel the weight of it. And then you kind of straddle this and you kind of like scoot it along with your legs. It was a very slow process to get you there. And then eventually you rode this dirt bike and you get certified and licensed and everything. So complete that course, and the next step was, okay, buying this motorcycle. So when I saw that motorcycle, it was 1991 when it came out. By now, I think a couple years had gone by, and I found a brochure. So it had the 1993 version, and I still remember that photo. It had the bike up on a platform, and then along front of it, it had all these motorcycle riders in their leather jackets of different colors, kind of like bowing down to this motorcycle, because it was the top motorcycle at the time, and in the background it had this kind of like Egyptian display. But I had that on my desk, and I'd see that every time I was studying. And I would also visualizing owning that motorcycle before I had it. Unfortunately, when I was 16, my dad had passed away, so I would periodically go to the cemetery and visit his gravesite and things. And I remember one day leaving his gravesite, looking at my car parked on the side of the road there, and I thought, well, when I own that motorcycle, I'll probably be carrying a helmet, and I'll have gloves and a leather jacket, and the bike will be standing there. So that was the visualization process, along with seeing that photo. During the summers, I was working construction, and over time, when you're young like that, you don't have a lot of expenses, so the savings piled up, and eventually had the opportunity to buy that motorcycle. And it was one of the first times that I think I followed that goal-setting process to a T all the way through those steps. So I had a lot of fun with that, and my last piece of that was, well, I don't want to just ride it, but I want to get some experience and be safe. And I know in the Tony Robbins book, it talked about learning any new skill. It's not so much the time, it's the amount of activity. And he related to his public speaking. He said these top professional speakers, they're doing maybe 5 speeches a month. What if I do 5 speeches in a day or 2 days? Then I'm getting all this experience. And he just really put a lot of time into that. And that's how I saw the motorcycle. I talked to a friend, and he'd owned a motorcycle for, I think 5 years at the time, and this is back in the Midwest, so it's not year-round, and he had about 3,500 miles. So I thought, well, if I can do that one summer, I'll have as much as this 5-year person. So that's what I did. I rode that motorcycle, and every time I had a break between class, I would be on that motorcycle because I could get really good parking. I would ride around campus. And this was not the intent, but this is a side benefit to having this motorcycle. I probably met, I think once I had 36 girls in one semester on that motorcycle. And the best story of all, I remember leaving class, this girl was with her boyfriend, and I asked her if you want to go for a ride, and she left him there on the curb and went with me. It was so amazing. But love riding the motorcycle. I had every pothole on this campus memorized, and over time accumulated, I think it was somewhere around like 25,000 miles of experiences riding that bike. And then moved out to Las Vegas, and then just kind of get busy with things and didn't do a lot of riding. But I did have a neighbor that was in the Air Force, and he was an Air Force mechanic, which worked out really well because he would do some of the maintenance on it. And he'd asked, hey, do you want to go for a ride with me and some friends? And I said, well, I haven't ridden some years, but I'll go with you. And he said, well, we got to leave early. It's super hot out here in Vegas. And I said, yeah, early's fine. Okay, 5:30, we're meeting at this gas station. That was like, I was thinking 7, but 5:30. So I ride my motorcycle up to this gas station. It was the pilot station on, I think, Craig and 15. And as I pull up, now I see all these motorcycles that were 900 cc's and 1100, much almost double the size of my bike, and they were all the top motorcycles. And I thought, wow, what have I gotten myself into? And I see these guys setting up the radar detectors, adjusting some of these computer gadgetry under their seat that modified like how the bike shifted. I thought, I don't know if I'm going to make it home alive with these guys. But rest assured, another person said, hey, I've ridden one before, we'll just stay in the back. Because I'm picturing a big pileup with these guys. So we go out to the motor speedway, we take an exit somewhere, and we're on this long straightaway. And each place that we stopped, somebody would look around and say, no, this isn't far enough, the cops can radio from this point to, and they were figuring this whole thing out. So we go further out. And as we're riding, I'm looking at my speedometer, making sure I'm in the back of this group, and I'm at 120, well, about 110, then 120, 138, 142. And at that point I said, I'm thinking about physics and things, I better just let this go. And these guys vanished. So from at 140, they were at like 180 to 190 further down the way, but luckily we made it home safe. We did get pulled over, and this police officer said, you know, all of you passed by me at about 110, but you all look alike, so today's your lucky day. But that's just my personal story about setting goals. So if there's something that you haven't experienced or done, you never know, you can go from 0 to 142 as well. Mr. Doe.